Beyond the buzzer, inside the game, this is SportsIQ with Larry Smith.
Hey, it is Friday Eve, but it is also week one, and that means we have some college football games tonight. We'll talk more about that here a bit later on. Man, we've got a great lineup as we begin to kind of, peel back the curtain a bit, get some insight on some of the big games as we've been doing all week long, and we'll be doing that quite a bit here now that football is here. Anwar Richardson joining us here in a couple of minutes. If you have not talked to Anwar, if you haven't read his stuff, stop a minute and give him a listen. He's about 2 minutes away. Hilarious guy. He's with orangebloods.com. And so obviously he covers Texas Longhorns athletics, especially football. And he will be in the house Saturday in Columbus with Texas Ohio State. We'll talk about that in a minute. Also, Chapel Fowler joining us, Clemson beat writer from the State newspaper, to talk about the Clemson-LSU game, Battle of the Tigers. And speaking of Tigers, from LSU, Ben Diaz is going to be joining us to talk about the guys from the Bayou as well. Can they go on the road? They don't mind scheduling these tough opponents, but they don't win. So can they change that around on the road at Clemson primetime Saturday night? We'll talk about that with him as well. So again, a very busy hour coming up. Producer Tony, we're now down to team number 2 in his preseason top 25. We'll talk about that. Yesterday, number 3 was Penn State. Who is left? We will find out. Okay, a couple of quick headlines for you. Just after we finished the show yesterday, the Ryder Cup captain Keegan Bradley making his final 6 picks for this year's squad. At 39, Bradley is the youngest captain since Arnold Palmer back in 1963. He was 34 years old back at that time. Bradley awarding the final 6 spots on the team to Justin Thomas, Colin Morikawa, Ben Griffin, Cameron Young, Patrick Cantlay, and Sam Burns. 4 of the 6 selections have prior Ryder Cup experience. Griffin and Young set to make their debuts. There was some talk maybe would Bradley choose himself. He chose not to choose himself. Ryder Cup will be contested September 26th to the 28th at Bethpage Black in New York. Great track. Can't wait for that. Hopefully the Americans come through. Good luck to the fellas. NFL news, the Vikings bringing home an old friend yesterday at a trade with Carolina. Minnesota having issues with the wide receivers. Jordan Addison suspended for the first 3 games of the season. Star Justin Jefferson dealing with a leg injury. So they reacquire Adam Thielen yesterday for a 2026 fifth-round pick and a 2027 fourth-round draft selection. Thielen played his first 9 seasons in Carolina, or before Minnesota, before being released by the team 2 seasons ago. On the diamond, New York completing a 3-game sweep of the Phillies at Citi Field, 6-0 victory. Rookie Nolan McLean became the first New York Mets pitcher to win his first 3 major league starts, tossing 8 innings of 4-hit ball, striking out 6, and issuing no walks. New York now 7-2 against Philly this season and closed within 4 games of the lead in the NL East. The Blue Jays, Yankees, and Red Sox all winning yesterday, leaving things status quo in the AL East. New York had the most fun in their win. Aaron Judge, a 2-run homer. Cody Bellinger homered as well on the next pitch as the Yankees went deep 4 times and scored 9 runs in the 3rd inning of an 11-2 rout of Washington. The Dodgers added a game to their lead in the NL West thanks to a 5-1 win over the Reds, and the Padres losing to Seattle 4-3. Shohei Ohtani struck out a season-high 9 in just 5 innings for his first victory of the year as a starter. By the way, LA becomes the first team to sweep the Reds this season. In the W, Las Vegas continues to be red hot. Asia Wilson, 34 points, 10 rebounds. Teammate Jackie Young had her second triple-double of the season. Aces beat Atlanta 91-85 for their 12th consecutive win. And as a result, these two right there near the top behind Minnesota. But now it's the Aces taking sole possession of second place in the WNBA standings, a game ahead of Atlanta, 6 games behind league-leading Minnesota. As we talked about again, it's kind of like, back to school week right here, week 1, college football, and the game we've been talking about all week. Number 1, Texas on the road at the defending champion, Ohio State Buckeyes, number 3 in the country. Joining us once again, friend of the show. Good to have you from orangebloods.com. Anwar Richardson. I know your bag is packed. You've got all your notes ready, laptop ready to go, right?
Yeah, I mean, pumped, man. This is, last year got a chance to go to Michigan for the first time.
Okay.
2 years ago, I had a chance to go to Alabama for the first time. And so the good thing for Texas fans and Steve Sarkisian in the program has been they got wins in those games.
Yeah.
And so I think they're hoping for the trifecta, which is going on the road hostile environment against the ranked team, and hoping that, hey, once again, they'll actually pull out the victory.
I wonder if there is the last program to win at Alabama, at Michigan, at Ohio State in the same decade.
I don't know. Does that program exist? I don't. I don't. I'm not quite sure, but it's going to be fascinating. The thing is, the Texas being on the road will be the subject of conversation. Texas, they're on an 11-game road win streak as of right now. The last time they had a loss on the road, it was against Oklahoma State in October of 2022. And since then, they've run off 11 straight. That includes the Alabama that you're talking about, includes the Michigan that you're talking about. So they've had success on the road. And one of the things that when I talk to people behind the scenes and talk to Sark about it, and they just feel like one of the things they like about it is that they feel like they get dialed in. They like this whole us versus the world thing. They like the whole Texas is hated kind of thing. And look, there's a lot of people who can say that. I think it helps when you have talent. It's easy to say like, oh, it's us against the world. But it's us. Everybody can. UTSA can say that. They can say that. Anyone can say it. But it helps when you actually have some talented people and talented roster. And so when you have a talented roster, that makes a difference. And the other thing too is when you think about this Texas roster, you and I are older, where we remember the not so great Texas teams. Like we remember Kansas, right? And we remember what it looked like after Colt McCoy up until now. When you look at this roster, the majority of these players only know winning. You look at a guy like Arch Manning. This is year 3 for him. All he knows is Big 12 championship. We went to the SEC title game. We've been to the semifinals twice. This is just what we do at Texas. You look at Anthony Hill, a third-year guy. It's the same thing. There's only one guy on this team, Larry and Tony. There's only one guy on this team who knows anything about that 5-7 team that Steve Sarkisian walked into, and that's Michael Taft, the safety. Everybody else on this team only knows Texas as a winning program. And so when you're going on the road, again, sometimes we think about all the other, like, you lost to Kansas. And these guys are like, Kansas? We beat Kansas. What are you talking about? So it's just a different mentality for this team. There's a little bit more of a winning attitude, a winning culture. And so that also helps to kind of bleed into the success that they hope to have this upcoming weekend.
Yeah. And, I think we've talked about, several times, I don't know if we've discussed this with you in terms of the new era of college football with NIL, expanded conferences, realigned conferences, et cetera. We know there's another iteration that's going to come. But I think really as we, get down in terms of, our kids and their kids getting into this, we'll see kind of this new world where really, kind of the post-COVID era of college football. And I think there's this opportunity with the expanded playoff of this new higher echelon of programs. Texas historically, obviously one of the great programs in college football, but a chance now to become one of the super elite. And that, just as you said, when you have that culture where you're 10 wins every single year, playoff every single year, college championship every single year, Texas right now they're one of those programs. And if you said, give me 5, 7, 8 programs that are at the very top, Texas is in that group.
By the way, you said COVID. You know, like most of the kids who are starting kindergarten this year are COVID babies. Just do your 5-year math or so. 5-6 year math. Most of those kids are actually, COVID babies right now. That's the byproduct of that. I just know that because my girl, she's a kindergarten teacher. But it's interesting because you talked about the NIL thing, and I think it's harder to win now because beforehand you saw everyone just went to Alabama and right. Alabama just stacked the talent, right? Or Georgia, and Georgia can just stack the talent, right? And there was only a couple of people at the top of the food chain. Now you have programs that'll say, we'll put that money together and we'll just spend it on this guy. And so now all of a sudden Texas Tech is getting 5 stars again, right? And you're like, wow, they're getting 5 stars. And you see other programs that could just load up. So I feel like it's more impressive in the transfer portal era, in the NIL era, where you're able to actually keep guys on your team and maintain that success year in and year out when you have guys who can leave. Like when Texas finished their playoff run last year, no one really took a break and said, all right, well, let's just reflect on a good season. You know what happened? Every agent was saying, time to pay me. And so you had the Texas general manager, Brandon Harris, and everybody else spending the week or so afterwards. Because you remember, you get after the playoffs end, you still have a transfer portal window that extends to those guys. So you have an extra 5 days or so that now you can go to the portal. Well, what happened? Well, we went to the semifinals. We were successful. You're going to pay me, right? So now all of a sudden you had to fight to keep the guys on your roster. So one thing that they take a lot of pride in at Texas is that they haven't lost a guy that they really wanted to keep. They lost maybe one person, but his name was Sydir Mitchell. Outside of that, everybody else, the quarterbacks, they've been able to keep, the wide receivers. You go down the list. They say quarterback Arch Manning. People always speculate, is that guy going to leave? And guess what? If Arch Manning decided he was going to leave, the money would be there and the opportunities would be there, right? And so it's more of a challenging thing and a more challenging era to keep your roster intact. So for got teams like a Texas to be able to do that, Ohio State, the Georgias of the world, Notre Dame, like where they're not having major losses, but they're able to reload. I think that's really impressive. It's probably a hats off to those coaches and the GMs that they have on their staffs. And I don't think Georgia has a GM, but they definitely have a cohesive unit as well.
Yeah, no question about that. Talking with Anwar Richardson of OrangeBloods.com as you get ready for Texas, Ohio State. You mentioned his name a couple of times already. Arch Manning, his time finally is here. He's waited. He's been right there. Not a surprise. I mean, they said when he committed to Texas, years ago, that he and his family both said, look, we're in this for the long haul. He doesn't have to start on day one. And that has not been the case. We've seen him at moments here and there. But now he's been handed the keys. What can we expect from Arch Manning, do you think, on Saturday and here throughout the season?
Yeah, I mean, thanks for pointing that out. That's the thing I've said for years is that the Manning family may or may not know little things about football and quarterbacking. And then, they understand that sometimes going out too soon can be more of a detriment to you in your development. And so they've always looked at it as we have time, like you don't have to do things. And the other thing that I know they've looked at it and the perspective has been, Arch, this is the most fun you're ever going to have playing football ever again. Because guess what happens? It ain't fun in the NFL. Ask Peyton how fun it was his rookie year. When he got to Indianapolis and he was breaking the interception record, that wasn't fun. Ask Eli how much fun it was those first couple of years with the Giants. That was not fun. And that New York media market just crucifying you every single week. We can get your grandpa on the phone. We can let you know how fun it was to play for the Saints, right? So it's been like, hey, go out, be a regular young person, a young man. Go lose your student ID, find a way to find it back, right? And just be a young person because you won't have fun after this. It's going to be strictly business right now. So right now he gets to go to Chipotle and he likes to go to Chipotle and he gets to go and just be a normal kid. You won't have that. But so that's part of him waiting his turn. He said like, hey, it's frustrating waiting my turn. Like, I'm a competitor. I wanted to play. Quinn Ewers wasn't supposed to be back last year.
Right.
Quinn Ewers, the thought process was Quinn Ewers was going to have a good season the year before him to go into the NFL. And last year was supposed to be Arch's team. But Quinn Ewers didn't have a season where he felt like he could leave and he came back and it pushed Arch back to the sideline. That's why they had to find a package for Arch to kind of like, hey, you're playing, right? Yeah, come in. You can run on the first, want to run a fourth down? Like, you want to get a couple of plays and like, see you playing, right? And, now they don't have to do the specific Arch, package for him. His time is here. He's had, the past couple of years to really watch and observe from Quinn. And he said, one of the things he said this week was, hey, I've been able to learn from Quinn, especially on the road in big games. Been able to learn how he conducts his practices, how he conducts himself and carries himself. And I've been able to learn that. But I think the difference between Quinn and Arch is that Arch is more vocal. You see, he's got more swag than Quinn does, and so he's the guy that they're rallying around. And look, the good thing for Arch is he won't need to carry this team. They've got a defense, so the main thing for Arch is just limit the turnovers. Move the ball effectively. Can continue the balls on third down. But they're not going to say it's you or nothing else. Like, it's going to be like, hey, you're a component of this. We're going to need you to win some games. But whatever you think of Quinn, all he has to do is just be a little bit better than Quinn for Texas to really kind of hit the next level. And Quinn was probably good. He wasn't great. There's a level of great that's out there. I just would say Quinn is good. If he could be somewhere between good and great, and I don't know what that word is, but if he could be that, then Texas could potentially live up to all the hype and expectations that people have for them.
Yeah, well said. Last year we were just talking yesterday with Kevin Noon of BuckeyeHuddle.com about the Ohio State side and about the one team in the playoffs that did shut down Jeremiah Smith was Texas. What was the Longhorns' secret sauce in stopping this young freshman receiver who now they say is even bigger, better, even faster than he was last year, now that he's going into his sophomore year?
There's no way in hell they're going to hold him to one catch for 3 yards again. That is the perfect storm of success where you're able to kind of hang your hat on that and say, like, yeah, we held him to one catch for 3 yards. That's like, sometimes you have your friends who will say, like, man, I played against that guy in high school. You see him in the NFL. I used to play against that guy. It's like, okay, yeah, but come on, like, Jeremiah Smith is arguably the best football player in the country. Country, all right? So, listen, Texas had a really good defense. Texas had a guy by John A. Barron, but John A. Barron ain't there, okay? John A. Barron's in the NFL. He was the best defensive back in all of college football last year, and you can attribute that success to them. But, hell, that's not going to happen. That guy's too good. Like, listen, I ain't going to blow smoke up no one's ass. That guy is way too good to be held to one catch for 3 yards once again. And at the end of the day, it's almost a meaningless stat because Ohio State won the game, right? So, they're not going to do that again. But what they have to do is just hope that he doesn't go crazy. Like, you don't want him to have a career day on you. He's going to have success. That's going to happen. But they've got to pressure that quarterback the same way that Ohio State is going to throw a bunch of different things at Arch Manning and try to confuse him. That's the same way Texas has had to be able to do that. Get the pressure on him. Don't allow, Saying to make a bunch of big plays. Look, if Texas can hold it to that number, great. Congratulations. But I'd bet a whole lot of money that he's going to have more than one catch than 3 yards. I don't want to put up too much. Because I'm older, I got kids. I don't want to risk too much, but I'd be surprised if it looks like that again.
Very well said and fair enough. All right. Well, listen, we will let you get ready to kiss the family goodbye and hop on the plane. Appreciate your time as always. Enjoy the time in Columbus. Like we were saying before we came on, I think Ohio Stadium is one of the great. I'm not a Buckeye fan. I mean, I have no love for the program, but I do respect that. I think it's one of the great cathedrals in college sports, and I think you'll enjoy the visit.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. You know what? And kudos to both programs. It'd be very easy not to play tough teams and tough opposition, but kudos to both of those programs for saying, you know what, we're not going to shy away from that. We're going to give college football what it wants, which is the top matchups, and I'm looking forward to my time in Columbus. You guys take care.
All right, you too. Thanks so much. Once again, Anwar Richardson joining us, orangeblood.com. Always great to have his insights. We always, Tony and I both are sitting here. We always giggle when we talk to Anwar because he keeps it real. And that's why if we could have him on the show every week, we would. If he had that kind of time in his schedule, we would have him on every single week because one of the more entertaining people to talk to. Anwar Richardson, once again, we're talking Texas, Ohio State, coming up here on Saturday on Fox. Okay, we are just getting started here on the Sports IQ. More college football coming up next, right here. Stay here.
You're listening to Sports IQ with Larry Smith.
Welcome back here to the Sports IQ. Great conversation there with Anwar talking a little Texas Longhorns. Let's shift gear now and talk about the other premier game Saturday night, 7:30 Eastern time. They're at Clemson. By the way, one of the talked about stadiums at Ohio State. Clemson also one of the great stadiums in the country. Frank Howard Field there at Memorial Stadium. Chapel Fowler is the Clemson beat writer for the state newspaper there in South Carolina. Chapel, good to talk with you. I know we've talked quite a bit, I think, first time on the show, so welcome to the show.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, I like how you mentioned it's the other premier game with Texas, Ohio State. I saw like a ticket data thing that someone sent to me a few days ago, like a PR release, and I think the average ticket price for Clemson-LSU was like, I don't know, $3 or $4.21 or something dollars. And I was like, wow, that's kind of high. And then Ohio State, Texas was like $615, like average ticket price. I'm like, yeah, there's a little bit of a divide there. But happy to be in the press box for the second biggest game on Saturday night.
There's no slouch, and there's no question at all.
Yeah.
With this, it's a great program. Talk about we've talked quite a bit here the past couple of weeks here this month as we're getting ready for week one as we're finally here about Dabo Swinney and how it's funny, there are some pundits and critics who said he was down when they went only 9 games. Oh no. But this is a model of consistency. They're in it every year. This feels like a Clemson team that's going to be back on top and back in the mix of things when you get down to deciding a national champion.
Yeah. Really the public opinion, the national opinion on Clemson, on Dabo's philosophies has shifted wildly over the last year. And I think it's because of results. Like Dabo is a guy who he has a extensive, rigorous method. He sets like 13-month calendars. Like he has the next month's August or the next year's August like camp planned out like the previous July. Like he's a relentlessly detailed and he sticks to what he knows and what he thinks is right. And sometimes that can rub people the wrong way. And I think there's a lot of valid criticisms over the last few years about, their lack of portal usage and, how they've executed in certain games. But he stands on what he believes. And last year with, 0 transfers on the roster, that was the big thing. And then they go 10-4, they win the ACC, they make the playoff. They give Texas a really good fight in the first round of the playoff. And then they bring back like basically everybody who had eligibility remaining from that team, which kind of speaks to their retention and going more all in on this NIL and rev share stuff. They've committed a huge percentage of their money to football, like one of the highest percentages in the country among that rev share $18 million number. So he's doing what he thinks is right, like the same stuff he's been doing for a long time. And for a few years, those results didn't really show up. But I think they've landed a few more elite receivers. They've nailed a few more recruiting evaluations, and you put all that together, add a few transfers in, and his philosophy, his way of doing stuff is working again. And I think that's why you're seeing such a love fest, and it's probably deserved.
Yeah. Well, veteran guy has been there 10 plus years. That is a short list in college football these days, right? To have that kind of staying power. And at the same time, I think, again, to your point, the culture, you come in and with all due respect to other, fantastically successful programs over the decades, Clemson, he can point to 2 national titles here in recent years. I mean, it's not just like this happened, back in the 60s. No, this was today. We just did this. And it feels like right now, even, we talk about Cade Klubnik as I kind of do that awkward shift to get into that. He's got the strongest quarterback he's had probably since Trevor Lawrence's last year. Is that fair?
Absolutely. That is beyond fair. I mean, since Trevor, it was, an up and down stretch of DJ Uiagalelei, who for a while looked like the guy. I mean, I'm sure y'all remember the Clemson Notre Dame COVID year game, double overtime in 2020 when Lawrence has COVID, DJ comes off the bench and just balls out. Overtime that did not exactly bear out. But yeah, I mean, everything Clemson's offense did last year, if you want to talk about total yards on the season, yards per game, yards per play, total touchdowns, Cade's passing stats, Cade's total offense stats, all this stuff was the best they've had in a single year since Trevor Lawrence was there. So I think that speaks to obviously Cade's talent and development. Like he took a huge step from sophomore to junior year. And I give him a lot of credit for that because he had some struggles that sophomore year, putting it lightly, a lot of kind of, backbreaking mistakes and moments where you're just like, dang, is this really the guy who was the number 1 quarterback recruit in his class, the Elite 11 MVP, the next chosen one? But he really stuck with it. Him and Clemson were very loyal to each other in that process. So he's right up there. A big year this year. He's already kind of in that pantheon of great Dabo quarterbacks already, but he could get a lot higher this year. And then I just think about that 2020 year I was mentioning. All their stats were on par with that for the first time in a while. That's K, but it's also their receiving talent. That was a spot where Clemson did not have like a plethora of dudes at wide receiver for a good 3 or 4 years. Part of that is not using the portal. Part of that is, the NIL space where they weren't as active and as willing to, throw a lot of money at guys. Part of that is recruiting misses and guys that were highly rated that they got that just didn't really pan out. But they have that now. Bryant Wesco, TJ Moore, those are 2 freshmen who came in last year and played really well. Antonio Williams is a senior this year, one of the crispest route runners and best receivers in the country, honestly, out of the slot, kind of an underrated guy who's just been steady. So they've got the quarterback, but they've got the guys around him also. So I think that's all kind of contributing to what could be a really good year for Cade.
Yeah. Speaking of, and I think it, so much, I love, we talk about Texas, Ohio State, now Clemson, LSU. I love when these teams that are elite teams go out and play, let's go see right away what you got. I mean, listen, most, play the easier, directional school, give them a big check, work out some kinks. How big is this game for Clemson? You're in the ACC. You're not going to get a lot of shots at marquee games. There are some on the calendar here, but this could go a big way when you come down to selection time in November. To getting Clemson, possibly having a first round bye, since they're not going to lock into the conference. We discovered the conference champion bye thing doesn't work. So that doesn't matter. But Clemson, if you get a win here, you set yourself up for one of those 4 spots.
No, it's a great point, Larry. Like this game this is not an elimination game for the playoff by any means. Like we saw that last year when Clemson, just gets routed by Georgia and they're still in the playoff because of the ACC automatic bid. But like the perception and the winding your sails that you get from winning this game, prime time, Herb Street, Fowler on the call, ABC, 7:30, season opener, marquee, non-conference. Like this is, whoever wins this game is going to kind of ride that momentum high for like a month, I feel like. And rightfully so, because this is going to be a hard one to win, a crazy environment. Clemson is selling beer at their football stadium for the first time ever formally this season. They were one of the last power conference schools to not do that. So this environment's going to be a little extra lubricated, I guess, especially with all day to tailgate. But yeah, and I mean, the conference title, like no top 4 seeds for those conference champions. I think, like you said, I saw the same thing last year. I was like, man, it's crazy. Clemson had lost 3 games and they win the ACC title. And then suddenly, if the committee had decided that Clemson was a better team or had a better resume than Boise State or Arizona State, suddenly you have a 3-loss team that has like a top 4 seed in the entire playoff field. Like it didn't make a lot of sense. But like along those lines of the LSU game, this is one, if Clemson wins, they could stumble in an ACC game randomly in like October, and the LSU game almost like cancels that out in my mind, to the point where, if they win at LSU and then they lose the ACC game and they finish 11-1 or even 10-2 in the regular season with a South Carolina loss or something, an LSU win is the type of game that could keep them like in the playoff conversation as an at-large bid if they happen to lose the ACC title or something. So, I mean, way down the line, but this one has a lot of implications. I think they know that.
Yeah, I've got about a minute left. I want to go back to one more thing and kind of pick your brain on this. We've talked about, and you've mentioned even as well, Dabo Swinney, not following along with what everyone else is doing with the transfer portal and all that. It feels like to me we see a shift right now with the those players getting COVID years. They're aging out, and so you're getting more into a whatever traditional college model is in terms of length of career. A big Clemson year this year, and I wonder if people begin to kind of look at what he has done in the portal, how he's handled things, and begin to mimic his thing, where a couple of years ago it was being ridiculed.
Yeah, I think you saw that last year with Clemson and Florida State. You remember FSU in 23, transfer-heavy lineup, and they're lights out. They beat Clemson at home. They win the ACC. They get snubbed from the playoff. They win 13 games, whatever it is. The next year, again, transfer portal-heavy lineup, and they're 2-10, 1-7 ACC. And meanwhile, Clemson, this other ACC school, just kind of like proof of concept in the same conference, bring back all their guys, stay low to who they think is going to be good. And they win the league. They win 10 games to make the playoffs. So I think you're starting to see some schools kind of realize the importance of retention and shifting back. And this is not just Clemson. Like, I think Georgia, Ohio State, Alabama, some schools come to mind where you're not taking like 25 transfers a year. You're trying to keep your guys, ID a few high quality, high level transfers to plug in. Everybody always says, oh yeah, we're going to recruit from the high school level first. That's kind of hard to do in the portal era, but I think Clemson's done a good job of that. And definitely I think you could see some more schools kind of following that model, especially if Clemson has another good year this year, because then the proof is like totally in the pudding.
Yeah. Things are set there. There's no question. Again, the culture, that's important. They've always had a great culture. He certainly has done that and paying off dividends. Now, Chappell, we know you're busy. We appreciate your time. Enjoy. Boy, we are envious, you guys. You get to go sit in the press box for these things, but we'll be watching on TV. Have a great weekend and enjoy the holiday. Hopefully we get a chance to talk again soon.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Appreciate you having me.
I appreciate it. Chappell Fowler, once again, he is the Clemson beat writer for the state newspaper right there. He will be there in the house. Clemson hosting LSU Saturday night at 7:30 Eastern time. And I believe that is on ABC, ESPN. Bottom line, you're going to find it. I'm going to find it, and you're going to find it. Let your fingers do the walking. All right, we've got more conversation coming up here. College football, big weekend, week 1. And we're talking about it here on the Sports IQ.
Fans of big sports radio and sports spectacular podcasts have a new home on the Chief Sports Network. Find your favorite programs and content all in one place by downloading the Chief Sports app in your mobile device. Created in South Carolina, the Chief Sports Network is the home of an expanding network of live and podcast format programming. It is also the home of one of the leading national college football podcasts, JC and Morgan, hosted by ESPN's Mike Morgan and 24/7 Sports' JC Sherbert. Download the Chief Sports app for free and find all of your favorite programming under one easy umbrella. Thanks to all of our markets for your loyal support of Big Sports Radio and our Sports Spectacular podcast, and we look forward to connecting with you anywhere in the world on the Chief Sports app.
You're locked in to Sports IQ with Larry Smith.
Welcome back here to the show. Talking the commercial break we're joking, and hopefully he doesn't mind. Sometimes you have one government name and then there's another name you use, and so we have been communicating with Cory Diaz as Ben Diaz in our back and forth. But it is Cory Diaz. He is the LSU athletics reporter for the USA Today Network. Cory, welcome to Sports IQ.
Good morning, Larry. How are you?
I'm doing great. When your name's Larry Smith and you don't have any other aliases, it just gets boring. So I love this. This is awesome. Hey, let's get right down to it. LSU, we've talked to so many people here this month is getting ready for college football. Look, LSU, every year they kind of go out and they play this marquee first game. The problem is they haven't won that marquee first game. What feels different this time for you for LSU?
Well, I'll tell you what, if you spend any time with Brian Kelly or the players, they're very quick to say it's been a different feel to not only preseason camp, but dating back to, literally minutes after they won the Texas Bowl, on New Year's Eve last year. There's been this very direct way they've wanted to approach the offseason in terms of putting a lot of emphasis and a lot of attention much earlier on the Clemson opener than they have in the previous 3 years under Brian Kelly, in the past with the 2 Florida State games and last year with the USC game in Las Vegas. They've spent, we were talking to some players the other day, and I think they said that they've spent more than 20 days at least doing something Clemson related, getting ready for this game. And that's very different than in the past. And I think a lot of teams, they don't like to jump too far into, game prep early on. But, Brian Kelly has felt like something needed to change. There needed to be more of an emphasis on this team leaning into the mantra of going, quote unquote, 1-0. That's a sign that's been all plastered all throughout the LSU football facility, throughout the entire offseason, on all the television monitors, on the walls. It's on the big Jumbotron screen inside their indoor practice facility, just this big graphic with the Tigers says 1-0 on it. They've put Clemson paw prints on the tackling dummies at times. So there's been a ton of attention put on this game. And so, at this point, we're only a couple days away. They got to go play it now. So we'll see how it goes. But there's certainly been a different approach to this opener this year.
I love that. I love, coaches, finding those little things, little motivational things, the psychological game, that you play. It's funny that, this is I've been saying all week and again for the past couple of weeks here that I love when teams come out and really challenge themselves early. And this is one of those. That's why I think it's great LSU does this. But again, like you said, you got to try to find a different way at this. If LSU can get a win, it just puts them, I think, again, that right away they'll spend most of the month of September being talked about as one of those 12 playoff teams. If they lose, they're one of those that it's maybe on the outside in. So even just from a conversation standpoint, this is just such a huge game.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, listen, if LSU goes in to Memorial Stadium, which I'm sure Saturday night is probably going to be, and I've been in some crazy environments, in my career so far, but I have not been to Clemson yet. So I'm looking forward to just seeing what a big game atmosphere in that stadium is going to be like. They go in there and they win that thing, whether they win it by 10 points or a last second field goal. It's a win that would, I don't think there's any question, would catapult this team into a mindset of we can win every game on our schedule. It doesn't matter who we're playing. And that's not a knock on any of the other teams that they're playing after Clemson. But I personally think with Cade Klubnik, TJ Parker, Peter Woods, I think Clemson has all the pieces right now to be one of the top 2 or 3 teams in the country. Now, I know in the polls they're not up there that high, but I think they're that good enough. You go in there and you win at their place in the opener. LSU could be looking at 11-1, 12-0. Now, if you go, and obviously on the other side of that coin, right, you go and lose. LSU is almost in a win-win situation here in a weird way. They go and lose outside of getting their doors blown off. It's not going to be a bad situation for them. They go and they lose on a last second field goal to Clemson on the road in the opener. I mean, yeah, you're 0-1 on the year, but I don't think any of the players would lack any more confidence coming off of a performance like that. I don't think, the national landscape would lose any confidence in what LSU possibly could achieve this year because they played a really competitive game against a really good team in a marquee game and, Saturday night prime time. It's kind of what you expect anyway. You expect to go in there and it'd be a really good football game. So, I don't want to say it's a 100% win-win, but LSU's in a good spot to where, the outcome of this game outside of just getting their doors blown off is not going to hurt them perception-wise.
Yeah, completely agree with you that, it's one because again, there aren't many teams that will go into conference play saying we already have a top 10 game on our resume, right? So like you said, to your point, win or lose, it's a plus for LSU. What do you think the LSU has to do to get this win on the road? You've had time now to kind of you've watched LSU here this whole month, followed them the entire offseason, done your homework, here the past couple of weeks for Clemson. What has to happen for LSU to get that victory?
I think it has to start with trying to establish the run game. I think there were times both Brian Kelly and offense coordinator Joe Sloan have talked about this, this preseason and even going back a little bit further, into the offseason. But there were times last year where it wasn't like complete abandonment of the run, but they were so more heavily reliant on Garrett Nussmeier and his ability as a quarterback that they felt like, there were situations where they just wanted to try to get him into more of a rhythm and try to get him, in that timing with the accuracy, with the throws to the receivers, as opposed to, handing the ball off to Caden Durham and letting a former Texas, state champion who runs a 4.2 40, sort of find his footing and kind of get going, get a rhythm himself. So I think we'll see it early Saturday night. I think we'll see an emphasis from LSU to try to get Caden Durham. And look, let's be honest, it's basically a brand new offensive line for LSU this year. They'll have Braylon Moore, who's a Virginia Tech transfer. He'll start at center. Josh Thompson, who is a graduate senior transfer from Northwestern. He's going to be your starting right guard. You're going to have a redshirt freshman starting at left tackle. You're likely going to have a redshirt freshman starting at right tackle. You're likely going to have, at oldest, a sophomore starting at left guard. All these guys, I think, collectively, may have 50 or so starts in their collegiate careers, but the majority of those guys have only, stood on the sideline at a college football game, for 1 year and seen the field sparingly. So if they can find a way to get the run game going behind an offensive line that's got a lot of questions heading into the opener, and let's be honest too, like, we got a youthful, inexperienced offensive line going against a mature, experienced, extremely talented Clemson defensive line. If they can somehow win those battles, you're talking about the offensive line starting to, really gain confidence as the game goes along. So they've got to get the run game going. And I think on the defensive side of the ball, containing Cade Klubnik when he runs is going to be key. That's something that really hurt LSU's defense last year. They couldn't really contain running quarterbacks, Lenore Sellers, Jalen Milroe, Marcel Reed. When he came into the game at the Texas A&M game, he completely turned it on its head, and A&M, they came from behind to win that game. So if they can contain Cade when he runs, LSU's going to be in a really good spot late in the fourth quarter.
Sweet. And that would be just week one, like you said. You mentioned a moment ago that win this game and maybe you run the table, maybe 11-1. You must be very high in this LSU team, because going through the SEC part of the schedule, 6 ranked teams right now. Florida here in a couple of weeks, Ole Miss, South Carolina, Texas A&M, Alabama, and Oklahoma to end out in Norman. That is a juggernaut of a schedule. Do you feel LSU has the goods to maybe make that run and possibly run the table this season?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I do think from a talent acquisition standpoint, I think Brian Kelly's and his coaching staff, they've done their best job this offseason in terms of going out, identifying players, especially in the transfer portal, that can come in and be immediate contributors, starters, for this team in roles where, we're talking about, I don't want to use the word major, but they're pretty substantial talent upgrade at at both safety spots. I think, the Houston transfer, AJ Halsey, and the North Carolina State transfer to Marcus Cooley. Those two guys, just pointing two guys out, are just huge talent increases at their respective positions. And so the talent's there, the pieces are there. The thing that I've noticed the last couple of years is that, again, sort of going back to, them, sort of going away from run games when, it felt like you kind of needed to lean into that. The coaching staff, the in-game decisions, I need to see improvement there, if I'm honest. I need to see better from Brian Kelly and Joe Sloan and Blake Baker and these guys during these games. In-game adjustments needs to be better from LSU before I would come on your guys' show and tell you, oh yeah, they're going 12-0. And obviously the game at Clemson is going to be I think a really good barometer of what, if I'm going to see any improvement, in that department from the coaching staff. But, I've got LSU winning 9 games this year. I think the opener, look, I just think, with it being your first game and the offensive line having so many questions, and they're going to be battling against one of the best defensive lines in college football, I just think that's a really tall order. I don't think they win this weekend. I do think it's a competitive game. Mm-hmm. And then obviously later in the year, going on the road to Alabama, I think Alabama's probably the best team in the SEC. I know Texas is, preseason number 1 and predicted to win it, but I think Alabama's the best team in the league right now. Mm-hmm. And then, you got games like, Florida coming to town. I think Florida's really good. Going on the road at the end of the year at Oklahoma could be a tricky spot. So I could see 3 losses for this team, but I could also see a 10-2 and 11-1 type year.
Yeah. I mean, it's all right there, like you said. It is, but with football, you've got to have the ball bounce your way. I mean, it's cliche, but it's true. But it feels like, again, this is a team. There's so much optimism today. Everyone we talk to this week in Baton Rouge, that maybe this is the year they break through. Hey, Cory, enjoy the trip over there. What an atmosphere it's going to be. We're jealous that you are there. We'll be watching on TV, and hopefully you'll have time to join us later on this season.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Anytime. I appreciate you guys having me on.
All right, you got it, man. We appreciate it. Safe travels to you. Hey, Cory Diaz, once again, covering LSU for the USA Today Network. And again, the big game, LSU Clemson, Saturday night, 7:30 Eastern time. Stay with us. More conversation. College football, it rules this week. We'll talk more about it coming up next. Welcome back here. College football. We talked about some games tonight. There's one top 25 game in action tonight. Boise State, 25th in the country, taking on South Florida at Raymond James Stadium down in Tampa. So the Broncos, they were the group of 5 representative, if you will, in the college football playoff last year. And they're in the rankings. That game actually is a 5:30 start on ESPN. So an early game tonight. All right. Top 25 action. Boise State does not make producer Tony's top 25. Sorry, maybe next year. But we have been counting it down all month long. We are now down to the number 2 team in the nation. Tony, the envelope, please.
Well, I'm going to have to go with the home folks here from the state of Georgia, the Georgia Bulldogs. Larry, I've spent a lot of time researching this, and one of the key factors for me is coaching. And right now, if there is a better coach than Kirby Smart in college football, you're going to have to show him to me, because to me, he is just the best coach, not only from a recruiting standpoint, not only from managing his assistants, not only from managing his players, working the portal, making great decisions on game day. Kirby Smart is everything you want in a college football coach right now. And, his recruiting classes bear that out. They're loaded every year, top 5. He's never been out of the top 5 in recruiting. So again, this is a team that is loaded, ready to go. Schedule works a little bit in their favor. So Georgia, had a little issue last year, but they're ready to go again for this year. Definitely, without a doubt, bet my mortgage, bet my retirement plan on the fact they make the college football playoff this year.
Yeah, absolutely. It felt like the one question I have about Georgia, is at quarterback. Beck is gone and Hunter comes in. It felt like there was a buzz around Athens and maybe they weren't completely sold on him as being the guy that's going to take them somewhere here in 2025. Are your concerns about having him? I mean, look, he came up, he's a Georgia prep legend right there in the state. Do you have any concerns about him stepping into that role?
I think Gunnar Stockton is going to be just fine. He got to play in the college football playoff against Notre Dame. He didn't show any issues. I think he's a strong kid. He doesn't have quite the arm Carson Beck had, but I think he's got enough. The nice thing about it for him is in the transfer portal, they brought in one of the most electric players in the country in Zachariah Branch over from USC. The Zachariah Branch is kind of your poor man's Travis Hunter. He can kind of do it all. He's got lightning speed. He's a guy that can stretch the field. If you can put the ball in his hands 5, 6, 7 times a game, good things are going to happen for the Georgia Bulldogs. The only concern I have, Larry, is behind Gunnar Stockton is there isn't much. They got a freshman who's a highly talented recruit, but he's just that, a highly talented recruit, no experience playing in the college game. So if anything happens to Gunnar Stockton, things could get interesting. I know they went out and tried to find a quarterback in the portal to make, ends meet there in Georgia, weren't as successful as they hoped they would be. And, so Gunnar Stockton, they got to keep him healthy and upright. Luckily, their offensive line is huge, and that should not be a problem.
Thank you for correcting me, by the way. I had him as Hunter Stockman. That's his cousin. Plays for Georgia Southern. No, Gunnar Stockton, you're exactly right. And we'll see, like you said. And like you said, the culture there's so much around him that they'll find a way to get him to succeed. Okay, so Georgia, number 2, be sure to join us tomorrow for the number 1 preseason team in the land, as says the world according to producer Tony, who's been doing this stuff for a very long time. Okay, our moment of awe is up next.
Everything is expensive right now. Gas, food, you name it. you're spending more, you are making the same or less money. So, what do? You rack up credit card debt. That's what you do. It's not your fault. It's the economy. And guess what? If you rack up too much credit card debt like some of us, you can't pay your bills. Then the credit card companies, as nice as they are, start hounding you for money. Then you start your downward spiral. A smart thing for you to do is to call the Zero Debt. They can help you consolidate all your credit card bills into one affordable payment. Millions of people have done it. It works to make you debt-free. Make this free call right now. It costs you nothing to learn more.
800-507-7293. 800-507-7293. 800-507-7293. That's 800-507-7293.
Time now for a moment of awe. And there's a website we ran across, a producer Tony found for us this morning, bvmsports.com. And they went through looking at the best names in college football this year. Some of the candidates were King Large, Squirrel White, Legend Journey. But the number one, the winner, has got to be Indiana Jones. Yeah, I'm not kidding. He's a 5'8" freshman, plays for Rocky Mountain College, and comes from Bellevue, Washington. He was a no-star recruit, but he's now playing NAIA. He's an adventuresome sort, so I hear. And he's going to do big things for Rocky Mountain College. So just avoid that ball coming at you. Indiana Jones, best name in college football. All right. We've had some great names on the show. Anwar Richardson, Chapel Fowler, Ben Diaz. We appreciate everyone coming on. Appreciate you as well. It's a Thursday. Hey, college football starts tonight. Mentioned Boise State in action tonight, number 25 in the country. Illinois, number 12 in the country tomorrow night. And then the whole smorgasbord coming up on Saturday. One more day to talk about it on Friday. Make it a great day today. We'll see you tomorrow here on the SportsIQ.
Thanks for listening to SportsIQ with Larry Smith, Monday through Friday. Continue the conversation at SportsIQ LS. We'll see you next time.